Pete has been standing on this rock for 4 hours. It is not a special rock. It is gray, it is round, it is the precise shape and personality of a rock. If you put it in a lineup of 10,000 other rocks, not one bird in this park could pick it out, including Pete. And yet Pete is standing on it, wings folded, eyes forward, with the grim devotion of a soldier guarding the last bridge into the capital. Ask Pete why, and he will not say the rock is valuable. He's smarter than that now. He has been ruined by a French fry, an economy, a bird bath, a worm shortage, and an actual monopoly. 5 episodes, 5 disasters. Pete has graduated from victim to case study to whatever comes after case study. So ask him why he's guarding a worthless rock, and Pete will give you the only answer that matters, the answer at the dead center of today's entire video. Because I've already been guarding it for 4 hours. That's it. That's the whole thing. Pete is not standing on that rock because of anything in the future. He is standing on it because of the past. And that, my friends, is the most expensive sentence a brain can say. Economists call it the sunk cost fallacy, and it is the reason you finished a movie you hated, the reason that project at work will not die, and the reason Pete is going to be on this rock when the sun goes down. Let's start with the clean version, because the trap only works if you don't see the shape of it. A sunk cost is anything you've already spent that you cannot get back. Time, crumbs, effort, dignity. The key word is back. It's gone. It is in the past, which is famously a place you cannot return to. Pete's 4 hours are not in the rock. They are not anywhere. They have evaporated into the great warm nothing, the same as every hour any of us has ever spent, and no amount of additional standing will summon a single one of them home. Now here's the only rule you need. An economist would frankly love it if you tattooed it somewhere visible. When you decide what to do next, the sunk cost is supposed to count for exactly 0. Nothing. You decide based on what happens from here. Future cost, future payoff, and that's the entire list. The past doesn't get a vote. The past isn't even in the room. That sounds obvious. It is the single most ignored rule in the history of brains. Because watch what actually happens to Pete, hour by hour, and watch how the trap tightens precisely as the situation gets worse. How did this even start? Simple. 4 hours and 1 minute ago, Pete found a rock. And Pete, who has spent 5 episodes losing everything to forces beyond his control, looked at this rock and felt a thing he hadn't felt in a long time. A hunch. Maybe it's a lucky rock. Maybe it's secretly an egg. Maybe, deep in its gray little heart, it is the one asset in this park that nobody else has noticed is priceless. Pete plants a tiny flag. Pete begins the vigil. Hour 1 is pure hope. Hour 2, the hope wobbles. The rock has done nothing. It has not hatched. It has not glowed. It has, if anything, become slightly more of a rock. A reasonable bird would cut his losses and go get a worm. But here's the poison. Pete has now spent an hour. And the thought of walking away means admitting that hour was wasted. And that admission feels worse, physically worse, than just standing here a little longer. So Pete stays. Not for the rock, for the hour. He is now guarding his own previous decision. Hour 3, Mildred shows up. You remember Mildred. Stern goose, community enforcer, the only bird in this park with the spine to say the quiet thing out loud. Mildred looks at the rock. Mildred looks at Pete. And Mildred says, with the gentleness of a slammed door, "Pete, buddy, it's a rock." And Pete says the most human sentence a pigeon has ever said, which is exactly why I can't stop now. Read that again, because it's beautiful and it's broken. The rock being worthless is the reason Pete gives for continuing to guard the rock. The worse the bet looks, the more hours are stacked behind him, and the more unbearable it becomes to admit those hours bought nothing. This is the engine. Every hour he sinks makes the next hour easier to sink, because quitting would mean the whole pile was a mistake, and the brain would genuinely rather set fire to hour 5 than confess about hours 1 through 4. There's a fancier name for the feeling underneath it. We hate realizing a loss. As long as Pete is standing there, the 4 hours are still, in his mind, an investment, a pending, a maybe. The instant he steps off, they curdle into a flat, final loss. And the brain treats that little funeral as the most painful possible outcome, even though, and this is the cruel math, the 4 hours are already gone in both stories. Staying doesn't save them. Staying just delays the funeral and charges admission. So let me give you the one question that disarms the entire bomb. The question Mildred is about to ask. The question that is worth more than this whole channel. Forget the 4 hours. Pretend you just walked up. Knowing everything you know right now, would you start guarding this rock? If the answer is no, you walk. That's it. That's the rule. Would I begin this today? Because if you wouldn't start it fresh, then the only thing keeping you in it is a ghost, and you do not owe a ghost your afternoon. Now, you did not come to this channel to watch a pigeon achieve enlightenment. You came because somewhere in this park, somebody is making money off this. And that somebody, obviously, is Gary. Last we saw Gary, his monopoly got broken up. And Gary had to do the one thing he hates: compete. Most birds would learn humility. Gary learned something darker. Gary realized he never needed to own the whole market. He just needed to own the one thing that's never been broken up by any government in history: your brain. So Gary has opened a new stall, and it is the most profitable thing he has ever built. It's a claw machine, a crane game, a big glass box of worms with a wobbly metal claw, and a hand-painted sign that reads simply, "Almost Worms." The genius is in the word almost. The claw is rigged to be weak, but not too weak. It grabs a worm, lifts it, carries it tantalizingly toward the chute, and then, every single time, at the last possible second, opens its little fingers and lets the worm tumble back into the pile. And the bird watching this does not think, this machine is a scam. The bird thinks, I was so close. Which means every crumb that bird has already fed the machine isn't a loss. It's progress. It's an investment in the worm that is clearly, obviously, just one more try away. Gary isn't selling worms. Gary stopped selling worms. Gary is selling almost, and almost is the best product in the park, because almost is fueled entirely by the crumbs you've already lost. A bird walks up with 10 crumbs and a dream. 3 plays in, the dream is gone, but the 10 crumbs feel like a deposit, and you don't abandon a deposit, so the bird plays 4, 5, 9, until it has spent 30 crumbs chasing a worm worth 1. And every time the claw drops it, the bird leans in harder, because surely the universe wouldn't make me come this far for nothing. The universe would. The universe does it constantly. The universe is, if anything, mostly that. And here's the part that should make the feathers on your neck stand up. The worse Gary's claw treats you, the more you pay. A fair machine that gave you a worm would end the relationship. A cruel machine that almost gives you a worm keeps you forever. Gary discovered that the most loyal customer in the world is one who has already lost a lot and refuses to call it losing. He doesn't need a monopoly. He just needs your sunk costs, and you bring those for free. Because this exact rock, this exact claw, it is everywhere the second you learn to see it, and you are never going to unsee it. It's the movie. You're 40 minutes into a film that is bad, genuinely bad, and you stay. Why? Not because the next 80 minutes will be good. You have excellent evidence they won't. You stay because you already paid for the ticket and sat through 40 minutes, and leaving would make those 40 minutes wasted, as if staying unwastes them. It doesn't. Now you've wasted 2 hours instead of 40 minutes. Congratulations, you paid double. It's the project that will not die. Some giant plan at some giant company, years behind, hopelessly over budget, and everyone privately knows it should be killed, and nobody kills it because of the magic words, "We've already spent so much." There's a real plane this happened with, so famously economists named the Fallacy after it. The people in charge weren't asking, will the next dollar pay off? They were grieving the last dollar. And grief is a terrible accountant. It's the losing bet you hold because selling means admitting you were wrong. It's the gym membership you keep to get your money's worth, which is not how money works. It's the all-you-can-eat plate you finish past the point of joy because you paid for it, cheerfully converting crumbs you already lost into a stomachache you're about to gain. The price of the buffet is gone. The only thing still on the table is whether you want to feel sick. You're choosing sick, to honor a receipt. It's a bad relationship measured in years instead of happiness. It's a war nobody can end, because ending it would mean the ones already lost were lost for nothing. So we spend more to pretend they weren't, which produces only more of exactly the thing we couldn't bear. The sunk cost fallacy has started wars and refused to end them, which is a heavy thing to learn from a pigeon on a rock. But here we are. Now, before you go cancel everything in your life, one honest catch, because the trap has an evil twin, and it's called quitting too soon. Sometimes you should keep going. Sometimes the rock really is about to hatch. But, and this is the whole thing, you keep going because of the future, never because of the past. If standing on the rock for one more hour has a genuinely good shot at a genuinely good payoff, stand. That's not the fallacy. That's just a smart bet that happens to point the same direction. The fallacy is never, should I continue? The fallacy is continuing because of what you already spent. Same action, completely different reason, and the reason is the entire test. This will pay off is a plan, but I've come so far is a ghost wearing a plan's clothes. Speaking of bad reasons that accidentally work out, let's check on the rest of the park, because the fallacy does not hit everyone equally. Kevin, our reckless, sunglasses-wearing friend who borrows enormous and somehow keeps landing on his feet, has of course gone all in. Kevin sank a fortune into something doomed, and instead of cutting his losses, Kevin doubled down, tripled down, leveraged the down, and through a sequence of events that should be illegal, came out richer. Which sends absolutely the worst possible lesson to every other bird watching. That doubling down on a sinking bet is genius, when really, Kevin just got lucky in a way that rewards the precise behavior that ruins everyone else. That gap between looked smart and was smart is its own giant trap with its own name, and will ruin a future Tuesday with it. Today, just know Kevin is the exception that teaches the wrong thing, which is the most dangerous kind of exception. Greg, meanwhile, greed fully intact, has expanded his worm farm into a second worm farm, a third, a worm farm parking structure because stopping would mean the first expansion was a mistake, and Greg would rather build a monument to the mistake than admit it. Greg is sunk costing in real time and calling it ambition. And Timmy. Toddler Timmy, our 6-year-old government, is on the ground in a full tantrum, and when Mildred gently suggests he could simply stop, Timmy delivers the purest, most honest, sunk cost line ever spoken in this park. I already started crying. He's committed. He's 4 sobs in. He cannot abandon the position now. Timmy is every boardroom, every army, every bird on every rock, just shorter and more honest about it. Which brings us back to Pete and the rock and our 4. Mildred tries one more time, and this time she doesn't argue about the rock. She asks the question, the good one. She says, Pete, don't think about the 4 hours. They're gone. They were gone an hour into this. They're not coming back whether you stay or go. So just tell me this. If you walked up right now, fresh, no history, and saw this exact rock, would you start? And Pete, for the first time in 6 episodes, is quiet. Because Pete knows. Of course he wouldn't start. Nobody would start. Starting is insane. He only continued because he'd already begun. And that, finally, lands. The 4 hours weren't an investment he was protecting. They were just gone, and he'd been setting fire to his evening to avoid admitting it. So Pete steps off the rock. And here is your reward, because the universe is consistent. Nothing happens. The rock does not hatch. It does not glow. It sits there being a rock, exactly as worthless as it was 4 hours ago, proving the only point it was ever going to prove, which is that it was always just a rock, and the 4 hours were always already gone. Pete walks away with nothing to show for the afternoon, which, yes, is a loss, a real one, hungry and empty-handed as ever. Pete always loses. But for the first time, Pete stopped losing on purpose. He didn't get the 4 hours back. He just refused to pay a fifth. And the very second Pete's foot leaves the rock, another bird wanders up, sees the little flag, sees this clearly important guarded rock, and plants himself on it with the bright, hopeful eyes of a creature about to spend his whole afternoon. The fallacy doesn't die. It never dies. It just changes which bird is standing on it. Off in the distance, Gary's claw machine drops another worm 1 inch from the chute, and a crowd leans in as one, certain, absolutely certain, that they were so close. So here's the moral, and it's a sneaky big one. You cannot get the 4 hours back. Not by staying, not by leaving, not by anything. The hours, the crumbs, the effort, they are already gone, and they are gone identically in every future you could choose. So they are not a reason. They were never a reason. The only honest question your brain ever gets to ask is the forward one. From right here, right now, knowing what I know, is the next hour worth it? And if the only thing answering yes is the pile of hours behind you, that's not an answer, that's a ghost. And you do not owe a ghost your afternoon, your crumbs, or 1 more minute on the rock. Watch the skies, hold tight to your worms, and whatever you do, when the claw drops the worm for the 9th time, walk away. Subscribe.